Invisible City is, it's the world that I was living in the Lower East Side in the mid '80s. And I called it Invisible City because I felt that my life there was unknown to the larger world, and that the life that I was living was invisible. But also it has a literary connection too, because I was a great fan of Italo Calvino's book Invisible Cities, which is about this fantastical encounter between Marco Polo and Kublai Khan. And he would talk about all the fantastic cities. Italo Calvino would write about these fantastic cities of imagination, of the dead, that could never exist, but Marco Polo was telling this to Kublai Khan because Kublai Khan's empire was so vast and unknowable, he would never even know his own realm. And to me, Invisible City was it was kind of my own story to tell the world of this place that was invisible to everybody else. I published it as a book. At the time, I was showing the work in the neighborhood. There were a lot of galleries that were popping up in a lot of the abandoned buildings. And I was showing the work, but it was very, the exhibitions felt very ephemeral to me. They'd be on the wall, they'd come off, and it'd become invisible again. So I also have a great affection for books. When I first moved to New York City, I helped pay for my rent and my school supplies by working at the Strand bookstore, which is one of the largest used bookstores in the world. It's a fantastic place. It's it's still there. But I worked at the Strand, and while I was there, I always loved books, but I really fell in love with books as objects there. And also people I studied with gave me a real insight into the feel and the quality of books. I studied with this guy, Bill Gedney, who's not that well known, but he was a great lover of photo books, and he would bring these Japanese photography books, which had never been seen. This is in the late '70s, early '80s, and he'd bring it to the classes, and we'd see, these wonderful books. So, yeah, the Strand bookstore, Bill Gedney, and then when I first graduated from school, I was working as a printer for a Magnum photographer, Gilles Perez, and he had just published his book, Telex Iran. And I was with him in his studio, and we'd edit his work, not the Iranian work, but we were, just this whole process of looking and editing, and I felt like in a book you can move the process further. As a photographer, you're constantly editing. You're moving through the world and selecting things. Then you select things from your contact sheet. You're selecting prints, and the book for me was a way to refine a full experience of something. And I felt that I was missing that when I would show one or two pictures in a group show in a gallery. A book, you sit and it's a private experience, and you keep it. It's you and the book, and I don't know, it just seemed perfect for this book. And I bled the edges. I wanted it to just fill the whole frame, and yeah, for me it felt like a fuller realization of the body of work. And when the book first came out, I was 28 years old, right? It's my first book. I'm so excited about it. I got the book in the mail, I'm walking around New York City holding this book. I don't know why I'm walking around with this book. Nobody really wants to see it, but it's my first book. I'm so excited about it. There's my local bookstore, which was the St. Mark's bookstore, and they'd have this table. It had all the cool, new releases on the front table when you walked in. And when the book was first released, I remember going there and seeing it on that table. I was so excited. I mean, for me, it was a big deal. Having worked in it as a bookstore as a clerk, and then to have my own book featured on a table, it was a big deal. And I didn't say anything to anyone there. I was too nervous. But I peek in, and a couple of days later, I went back again, and the book was gone. And I thought, well, nobody knows about this book. At that point, it hadn't been reviewed, and it had just come out. And so I sheepishly went up to the cashier and I said, "Oh, do you know about this book by Ken Schles called Invisible City?" And they went, "Oh yeah, that book." And I was like, "Why? Do you have it?" And they're like, "Yeah, we have it." And I was like, "Well, how come it's not on the table?" And they go, "We can't keep it on the table. People keep stealing it." And then they sell it right outside the door. So we keep it behind the cash register, so you have to ask for it. And I was so pissed, I was pissed off, but I was like crestfallen. My heart was broken because, you know, it's my first book. It was finally out, and it was invisible. You couldn't see it. You couldn't find it. You'd go to the store. You'd tell people, "Go to the store. It's there." And they go, "Oh, it's not there." And you'd have to know to ask for it. And they had it hidden behind the cash register because people were stealing it. So the book, it had a life outside of me. And people would come to me afterwards and tell me that they've moved to New York because of my pictures. And I never made the pictures to romanticize this place. I wanted to talk about the struggle and the humanity of what I was involved with. But you know, one time this guy came up to me and he was following me around, and he pulls out a picture, and it turns out that he got this apartment. And he moved into the apartment and set up a picture of himself as if he was me in this apartment, and wanted to give it to me as a gift. And then he wanted to follow me around for like a whole day. And I would hear, you know, these stories from people that they wanted to move to the New York that I was living in. It was not an easy time in New York. And this book, I think, reminded people of the difficulties of living in the city. And if you weren't involved in that world, you were an outsider, and it was hostile, and it was dangerous. And it pushed at all the little, I don't know, fears that people had. So I think at first, for me, the book is a love story. I mean, it's friends, it's lovers, it's people I was intimate with. And for other people, they looked at it and they could only see the surface, the grime and the dirt and the grit. But they were missing kind of this essential quality because of their own fears that they brought to the book.